for it.
And we're live. Hello and welcome to another episode of Loose Canon. We are continuing the talk of Clovis Bray's long-winded journal. He has a lot of science talk, just sciency word vomit. I mean, when I read it for the first time, and I do this with like all lore that kind of does this, I kind of get to this point where I'm like, I don't know what this means. I'm just like kind of scrolling by it, like just trying to get to the
Yeah,
point, the things that
yeah.
I can actually understand. Do you do that, or are you like
Oh
get it?
yeah. No, I skim it the very first time through. I
Mm-hmm.
skim the whole thing, and
Mm-hmm.
then I'll go back and a lot of times I'll skim it, and then I'll get to something that was kind of like revelatory, and
Mm-hmm.
then I'll stop and go, wait, what?
Yeah. What did I
And then
miss?
yeah, and then I'll be like, what? And then I'll start looking up stuff. And I usually get sidetracked, and I'll go look at some old ass lore from the grimoire, and then
Yeah.
come back to it and go, wait a minute, what were we talking about?
Yep.
And then reread it again completely. And then years later, we'll do it again. Like, what? Wait, did we miss something?
That's that's the thing, right? Like whenever we get something new, and I mean, obviously, years ago they had some ideas, and
Yeah.
they might have just been these like little baby ideas, and I think Deej actually said it. They plant seeds and they wait for them to grow, and so maybe someone was like, "I really want to do this, but it hasn't been greenlit yet. But just in
Yeah.
case, I'm gonna put this obscure little fact," and it's like no one's gonna think anything of it, and then 4 years later, you get something bigger, and you're like, "Wait a second, what that?" Like you go back to it, and it's just
Right.
huge. It's like,
Yeah.
how did you miss it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty cool. And then they have a little back door to get out of every little
Mm-hmm.
conundrum that they might find. But yeah, just like you said, all that ominous lore that we got in Grimoire. I mean, from D1, that lore was very heavy
Yeah.
and very outside of the box because we
Mm-hmm.
didn't know anything about the game. People complained when the game first came out there was no story, no story at all, because what there was in game was a bunch of writings that didn't really make sense or translate well because we had no idea what they were talking about at the time, other than this is arc energy, this is what the void is, this is what
Mm-hmm.
solar is, and this is what your enemies are.
Mm-hmm.
But even that explanation was pretty much in the air. It's
See,
like space magic.
I never, even back then, but especially now, I never understood these no story complaints. It's like it's no story in the same way that Star Wars has no story because it's such
Right.
a
Yeah.
huge universe. You can't explain every minor detail. The story of
Yeah.
D1 was you're a guardian. What does it mean to be a guardian? It means you're going on these quests and you're fighting for the city and the traveler, and you're kind of uncovering the fact, the opening of the universe, that something bad happened and you
Yeah.
don't know what it is yet, and here's this person kind of guiding you on this quest, the extra stranger, and they're saying like, you need to destroy this, it's this like root of evil, and then at the end the speaker's like, this was like a great victory, no one had seen this coming, like we were just kind of fumbling around until the guardian showed up and like did something no one else has ever successfully done. And it was like, that's a story right there. You might not like it, or you might
Yeah.
be overwhelmed at the universe around the story, but that's a story.
Boy, that sounds different now that the way you summarize it all just now, looking back on it with, I guess, hindsight's 2020,
Yeah.
haha. But listening to how you say that and putting it in perspective, man, that really was kind of like the first event
Yeah.
where Guardian truly showed like, hey, wait a second, this is happening, but what is this? So for you got to think for how many years before that, before we entered the heart of the darkness or whatever, defeated the
Hmm.
heart of the darkness, and had that realization that the exo stranger was here and all this stuff that happened like right after we were born, basically.
Hmm.
um yeah, so that's crazy to think, like, because there were warlords, there was a whole tower that was built, there were
Yeah.
many other guardians that had existed before us, but here comes the chosen one, I guess, right?
Yeah. Like, especially now with everything we know now, it almost feels like the tower and the city was kind of just getting by up to that
Yeah,
point. It was like
yeah,
we're struggling to survive. We're not really making headway, but we have this city. We're keeping it safe. That's our focus.
yeah.
And then we come in and it's like we're knocking down this boss, we're knocking down this boss, we're knocking down this boss, we're knocking down this boss.
Yeah, well, that was how the game was presented. I
Yeah.
remember pre-ordering Destiny a year in advance and not
Really?
knowing. And yeah, as soon as it was announced and it was available to pre-order, I pre-ordered it just because Bungie's history. I was a Halo
You
guy,
were a Halo guy, of course.
Yeah, yeah. So I knew that it was going to be great regardless. And if if it wasn't, whatever, I could just
Yeah.
go back and play Halo some more. But so the whole marketing around the game was, hey, this is the last safe city.
Mm-hmm.
This is the last place on Earth where people are safe, is how it was presented. And we didn't know why. All we knew that there was this big orb in the sky. We didn't even really know it was the Traveler back then. It took months before they told us what that was. So all we knew is that somehow that ball of energy was protecting people underneath it. And so we had all kinds of theories and ideas about it, but we didn't know anything. We didn't know nothing. And then we got the beta. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. That blew my mind away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like you said, the here comes the little old guardian. Here comes the little us. Eyes up, dude. Let's go save the world. Or the universe, really.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the very least, the galaxy. Like, we're not really
Yeah.
focusing on all the nonsense because I have to imagine there's like hive hijinks going on outside of our galaxy. Like, there's got to be like lieutenants who are
Yeah.
focused. Like,
Well,
Ziva
there are.
Wrath.
There
Well,
are
I
all
mean,
whole other planets being invaded and destroyed while we're
yeah,
doing all this over here in our soul system. But
I
this is
mean,
where the
like
Traveler is.
Ziva Wrath took 6 years to take notice on us, like actual notice on us. Like, you're telling me she was just sitting out there, just like, for six
No.
years doing nothing. Like, no,
Yeah.
they were destroying planets. They were messing shit up.
Yeah. I mean, the Cabal were running from something for
And the
however long.
Cabal.
I mean, goodness gracious, dude.
There were another one, like all the and whoever else, like what other aliens that could exist are just wreaking havoc on other planets that we don't even know about. Maybe they were touched by the
Yeah.
Traveler, or maybe the darkness passed through and now only the strongest are there. Like kind of like Callus. Like Callus encountered the Black Edge and he was able to go free. The darkness isn't here to kill everybody in that, it's playing a bigger game. So
Yeah.
who knows what other entities have taken the powers from the dark and have just run wild with it.
Yeah. I like to use this analogy that Bungie is like the snow plow that paved that moved all the snow out of the way for all the other games to follow suit,
It really did with Destiny, though. I mean,
Yeah. It it,
it.
it okay, because before Bungie, history wise, outside of Halo has a very intricate, universe.
Mhm.
It's just very complicated, and they make mistakes and have had retcons before. And
Mhm.
so I think they knew going into Destiny that they needed to have a back door out of every scenario. So anytime they do, and I mean this in a good way, but I
Yeah.
think that they know they have to be conscientious every time they write something.
You can never write
Um,
yourself into a corner. That's
right,
no matter what. That's a bad thing to do.
right, and I think one of the advantages of Destiny is you've got this paracausal force that really can kind of help you along your way. I mean, magic is just kind of like it's an outism.
Yeah.
But before Halo and knowing what they brought to Halo, before Halo, they had games like Marathon, and so Marathon had a ton of these alien races, just like we have now. And so it's funny if you think about Marathon compared to how Destiny is today. You had these primary races that you were fighting, and you had this over looming AI that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of, these AIs, and they were going rampant, and all these things that were introduced. But back in Marathon, they didn't explain the lore.
Mm-hmm.
All you knew is what was in front of you, and you had to come up with your own conclusions. And even to this day, they haven't gone back and fully fleshed that out.
Really?
Yeah, and so there are tons of people that are, fanatics about Marathon lore, and they've
Yeah.
come up with all of these, this is kind of like what we did in D1 when we had no information. We were just coming up with these ideas and these theory crafts, and based on what we knew, we had to puzzle it together to make it coherent. That's what people have done over the years with Marathon. So I think it was worrisome for a lot of people when Destiny first came out that would happen. That Destiny would just be that, and they would never explain what was going on. So maybe that was some of it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know back in, like, Destiny 1, a bunch of people were saying that Destiny is a sequel to Marathon, or Destiny exists in the same universe as Marathon, and things like that. And I was like,
Yeah, people still believe it.
yeah, and it's like, it's apparent, in my opinion, that Destiny is a spiritual successor to Marathon, that Destiny has a lot of Marathon Easter eggs, just like it possibly also has a Halo Easter egg, but an Easter egg is just that. It's like, don't look into it too much, because it's just it's a one-off. It's a remember this, and then it's not there anymore.
Yeah. Well, you had the UESC in Marathon, and you had the UNSC in Halo.
I didn't know that.
And then, yeah, and then in Marathon you had the MIDA,
Yeah,
the
and that's
Martian
exactly
Interplanetary Defense Agency, and then it's MIDA Multi-Tool.
And that was the Easter egg, that the Mida multi-tool is from another timeline where it did a lot of killing, and it's like,
Yeah,
cool, Marathon Easter egg.
yeah,
The end. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, there was a little bit of lore that came out. Remember when it got rebooted and the MIDA Mini Tool and Multi Tool came out, and they had a little lore entry to it,
Yeah.
and it was talking about the universe it came from or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and so wasn't that Shaq's?
I think it was Zavala's that.
Okay.
It was something about, like, Zavala saying certain weapons shouldn't be used by Guardians, and then Future War Cult's like, your Mida multi-tool has killed so many people, so maybe you should stop, like, get off your high horse and pretending that every weapon you use is good.
I love the I love the flavor text of that one, because it's got so many double meaning words, like a troll.
Yeah.
could be a troll, or it could just be, an airplane troll, but it's like a troll. And then you've got your that stupid compass on it.
It doesn't point north.
Yeah, it just points somewhere always.
It points to a hidden chest, remember?
Yeah.
That's what people used to believe back in D1.
That's crazy. Well, we can. I can start the show since we're already talking about items. We can do my lore card.
That sounds perfect. Let's go.
Okay. I'll keep it short. Yeah, right. Okay, so we got the Dawning. So this one was a Dawning item. It's called the Emberwick shell. So it's this shell that has a candle sticking out of the top of his head. Some people have been calling it the Inappropriate shell. I don't know why. But it's got some really cool flavor text. It says, "For ghosts who lead others home." So at first, you kind of like, what does that mean? Well, just the first definition, Emberwick, is the small ember inside of the wick that continues to burn even after blowing out a candle. So, that little piece of wick that's still burning. But the flavor text was what was really cool. There's this tradition of having candles in your window during the holiday, and the practice uses light as a beacon to guide family and travelers who've roamed away from home. And so that's really cool if you think about our guardian going off into the darkness, and the ghost is kind of calling him back home, right? Anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. So there's this tradition of having candles in your window during the holidays. It's different for each culture, but some origins differ based on religious beliefs and even regions. The use of light has become a tradition used to brighten up a home for the holidays, and placing a burning candle in one's window is a common tradition that dates back to colonial times. So, since the fireplace was a center for the family, the candle was typically lit from that fire, and then
Mm-hmm.
a single candle was often placed into the window when a member of the family was away. So, placing them in the window was a way to help guide them home in the darkness.
Huh.
Over time, it was used as a signal for good news or as a beacon to weary travelers. In early America, homes were often miles apart, and the candle in a window from a distance was a sign of welcoming to those wishing to visit. So the candle in the window during the Christmas time can be traced back to the Irish. In 1691 through 1778, the British government oppression created laws to target Catholics and force the Irish to obey British rule. And so these laws were called the penal laws. Priests were not allowed to practice their faith and were ordered to leave the country, so they went into hiding. When it was Christmas, the Irish Catholics would light a candle in the window and leave the door unlocked so that a returning priest may safely arrive at one's home to help say mass, which is like they're gathering and praying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when the British questioned the Irish about the candles, they said that it was a way to welcome Joseph, Mary, and the baby Jesus during Christmas time. And so the tradition changed over the years, and it became to mean a beacon of hope for any passerby. So it had a Christian root, but it morphed over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And so strangers passing by could even seek food and shelter in a home that had a candle in the window. So when Irish immigrated to America, the tradition was brought over and continued to evolve even more. And so in colonial times, a lit candle in a window let travelers know that they had a safe place to stay, offering refuge. Window lit candles also represented a beacon for a family member that was away. And so the family lit a candle every night in hopes that their missing member would one day find their way home safely through the darkness.
Hmm.
And that's it. So our ghost is telling you, hey, I know you strayed away from the light, but here's a little candle on top of my forehead. And one day maybe you'll come back.
I mean, it's not like we're leaving the light. We're just accepting that we have the ability to wield the dark.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's one way of looking at it.
That's interesting.
So happy holidays.
Yeah, for ghosts who lead others home.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. All right. Well, then, I guess that only leaves us to get into Clovis's personal log. You ready?
I'm ready. Here we go.
So last week we ended with the message from Elsie Bray saying that she was going to come to Europa, which was a big deal because Clovis doesn't talk to his grandchildren. His son is dead, and so all he has is his grandchildren, and he doesn't seem to talk to them very much. And in some of these entries here, I've actually noticed it a little more, and we'll get to it when we get to it. But so we're going to be starting out. If anyone's reading along or just trying to follow along in their own, it is the first entry 6. And so in entry 6, Clovis has a revelation that Clarity Control, the statue of the darkness, the veiled figure, is inviting him to make a gate. And so that is actually the gate that he eventually makes is that giant gate in the Glassway Strike. Yeah.
So
I
that
mean,
big gate is what Clovis made
well,
physically.
he didn't make it himself, but so you go in a little further to entry 6 amendment, and he reveals that his strategy was to get a Vex to build the gate for him.
Oh
And
yeah,
to
okay.
get the Vex, he had a raid on the Ishtar Collective, and it went off flawlessly, despite the fact that there were some casualties during the outbreak. Those two things don't exactly mean the same to me. When something goes off flawlessly, nobody dies, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. He had already kind of expected casualties.
Yeah. Flawless raids have a different meaning to Clovis Bray. I've done
he
so
gets
many flawless raids. It's impressive. But
he gets no medal.
yeah. So one thing I wanted to mention here is another back in D1, the Ishtar team who found the Vex, they were trapped in the Vex simulation. They weren't sure if they were the real them or if they were the simulation inside the Goblin. And so they had to bring in the War Mind. And they used it exactly like that, the War Mind. They didn't say Rasputin, and this was back before we understood there was only one War Mind. This was still when we were
Yeah,
under the belief that there were multiple War Minds, which there
yeah.
is not. And in this, he actually mentions that Rasputin intervened with frames and orbital fire in stopping their raid, because he's basically like, okay, I'm protecting the Ishtar Collective now.
Hmm.
Which,
Aurora knives.
I mean, that would probably be the orbital fire, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, absolutely.
isn't that kind of odd that Clovis Bray is planning a raid on the Ishtar Collective and Rasputin is stopping it or attempting to stop it?
Hey, wait a minute.
Right? Like, are they supposed to be on the same side?
Yeah,
And that's just kind of like the first in this the first instance that like maybe Clovis Bray isn't as in control of his company as we've been led to believe.
right. I guess it's like it reminds me of like the duel when two guys are standing in front of each other and one pulls
Mm-hmm.
out a knife, so the other one pulls out a bigger knife. Then the other guy pulls out a gun, so the other guy pulls out a bigger gun,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually they're both holding nukes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's basically the equivalent of him pointing a nuke at him and saying, "Nah."
Yeah. And continuing in this, he does get the Vex to build the gate, and he mentions how the gate shares nothing in common with the structure of Clarity Control, because of course it's not. The Clarity Control statue is of the darkness, and the Vex gate is
Yeah.
of the Vex. So thank you, Captain Obvious, Clovis Bray.
What a jerk.
Like he almost seems like he's surprised that they're not the same exact thing. He's so
Yeah.
like tunnel visioned on Clarity Control. He's like, nothing else is here to help me but you. Everything else is just stupid.
Yeah. Like it's just on the fringe.
Mhm.
So okay, so what's funny to me is when you think about Oryx being duped into opening a Vex portal and
Mhm.
bringing in the Vex into his reality.
Do you think they
Uh,
go on?
no, 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 it's fine. This parallel in the story. If you aren't aware out there, people, but there's this story of Oryx being duped by his sisters into letting the Vex come into his um, reality,
His throne world.
his throne world. Yeah. And so they had to fight the Vex for how long? Like for just a ridiculously
Yeah.
long time. And I guess time is really kind of irrelevant, but in that instance, they fought the Vex for so long. And so, to me, in my mind, if I think of Clovis using a Vex portal, it's kind of like, hmm, how does one acquire these knowledges? You know?
Mhm.
So maybe there's something to that. Maybe there's not, but maybe there's something to that. I know that we know that the Ishtar team, the Ishtar guys, were actively engaged with with the Vex
Mhm.
and their simulations, and we're fighting that whole thing forever, which in funny terms is not really anything, because if they're battling the Vex in a reality that was simulated, that timeline doesn't exist in our reality,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not linear.
Yeah. You know,
Just like Oryx.
you do make me think though, like, so Clovis is incorporating the Vex to create this portal, this gate to what we will eventually find to be what they call the Forge Star, Volantis. I think it's like Volantis 2082 or something like that.
Yeah.
So he does that because Clarity Control guided him to that. How did Savathun get this idea to trick Crota into opening up the portal to a Vex world in
Right.
Oryx's throne? Like, where did that come from?
I mean, her whole very existence is trickery, so I guess it's kind of like, well, duh, of course she's going to do that. But
Well,
yeah, I
yeah, no,
see
I
what you
get why
mean.
she
Like,
would do
what
it.
is the what is the end game? What is the point?
Well, I'm not even saying that. I'm saying, where did she even get
Oh,
the idea?
yeah, that's a good
Like,
one.
did Clarity Control, like, is she saying, I want to live forever? Because that's Savathun's thing as well. Like, she became the mother. She took the mother morph because she wanted to live longer than the normal
Yeah, the
lifespan
normal
of a
ride.
knight
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever. And so was Clarity Control kind of speaking to her, telling her the same thing? You got to go find the Vex. That's the way to immortality. They're doing it good. Copy them, type of thing. And then she was like,
Hmm.
"I'm not going to do that, but I will let my brother do that."
Oh man, this is where entanglement happens, right?
Yeah.
Within the lore. So this is what happens when you're so narrowly focused on one specific story of the entire universe of Destiny, is that you forget that there's all these other parallel stories that have happened,
Mm-hmm.
but were the underlying influences clarity, or did it have something to do with the darkness influencing the other enemy races to carry out their agendas, which were probably seeded by, if you put the darkness at the center of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you say, okay, let's just hypothetically say that the darkness has planted seeds in all of our enemy races to seek out an agenda that helps them uh, converge to one point, which is this origin point that we're all headed towards. Because if you think about it, as guardians, we're kind of like we're kind of forced to be we're kind of forced into these positions where we have to make hard decisions based on what's happening around us. So we don't really have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, we really don't have a choice. Like, choosing the darkness was not a, necessarily a choice. I mean, we had to. Otherwise, there's nothing. There's nothingness if you don't. Hmm. So Callus kind of accepts the nothingness as the end all point. He knows that much because he's seen the Black Edge. He knows that everything is inevitably going to go dark.
Mm-hmm.
The Hive saw a way to live forever, and so they're trying to perpetuate their existence by prolonging it as long as possible. And they learned that by something,
Mm-hmm.
probably the darkness. The Fallen were gifted like the Guardians, and they're kind of the cautionary tale to us as to what are the pitfalls of following the traveler. But they were led to their own um, destruction, and now are kind of being led by the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And the Vex are just machinery that inevitably will calculate an end means to the universe around them, to where it's just transformed or converged, almost like an AI that has gone
Mm-hmm.
to a higher. There's a word for that, singularity. Like, if an AI, so like the war mind, when we first learned about the war mind, the first thought that everybody had was, oh crap, he's going to be rampant, he's going to be evil, he's going to cause us all to die.
Yeah.
right? Nobody wants to trust Rasputin. Well, the Vex are kind of like the removed version of Rasputin. The Vex don't have that will to understand humanity or learn or have any kind of written identity. They're just machinery that wants to transform everything around them. But how did that happen?
Yeah.
Was it the darkness? We learned about clarity. We learned about what was the lore? We learned about the Precambrian explosion and
Yeah, that was the
the Winnower.
the Winnower said that
Yeah.
they inspired the first murder on Earth.
So if you think about that in relation to what's happening with Clovis, how does he come to the conclusion that a Vex gate is necessary and clarity? Obviously, he learns clarity, but so yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
scary to think. Huh? We could just all be on the same path.
yeah. But
I,
so he does build the gate, and he's planning to go through. He's going to be the first to go through, but not in the flesh. He says that he will use his assistant as a remote proxy, and it is also exciting that he can hardly. And then he died.
yeah, that's comical.
Yeah. How is he? I really just can't stress this enough. How is he surviving at all? Like, what is he? Is he just like organs opened up? Like, is he
Yeah,
just a chest cavity opened up for easy surgery replacements? And it's just like a super sterile room?
has to be. Has to be, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
where my mind goes.
I don't even know. It's so weird to imagine like what this actually is saying about him, how he can exist in some way where he's basically using a VR robot, but his body is in like just tatters, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, he's having to constantly replace his organs and be rebuilt so that he can sustain his mind before it can be transferred into a body that
Yeah.
will, yeah. So it's kind of like, and he knows that it's got to be the body that he goes into, it has to work before he can transfer.
Yeah, this is his one shot he's got, and he can't make the mistake that he let his son make.
Oh my God, it's so
Jerk.
bloody. Yeah, that's so cold.
But so as he's dead, and I guess this is kind of like a Thanatonautics, isn't it?
Yeah,
He's dead and
Thanatonauts.
he has these dreams. He's done this before. We've talked about this in a previous episode. He's dead and he has this dream, and in this one, just to quickly summarize it, he was a beast on Earth. He was like a salamander or an eel type of thing, and water passed through the Earth. And where the water passed, there was grass, which aphids would eat and survive, and it was good like that. And then some ants came, and the aphids killed the ants, and the rivers widened, and it made the grass more plentiful, and so the aphids strived. But then Clovis, as this salamander slash eel, uh, closed off one of the paths of these little rivers, these streams, and because of that, it made another stream even bigger, making it even better. And he told the aphids of the path he closed off to go to the other one and survive
Uh-huh.
together, join together. And he kept doing that until he's building a pond, and he's making all the streams divert into his pond where all the aphids live, and it's all great. And thus I proceeded to join all the streams together into one pond, and whenever the aphids of a small stream might protest, I said to them, go look at my pond and see the plenitude I have provided to my people there. When it became necessary to stop those upstream from polluting the water, I offered them the bounty of our pond, the grass and the watercress. And if they did not yield, I sent ant fighters against them because they were pretty good injured. They're their petty good injured the good of the all. And
Yeah.
so I really want
Huh.
I really want you to remember that statement that he is helping all of the aphids, and if you don't want to go to receive his help, then he's going to kill you for the benefit of
Right.
the aphids that will receive his help. And so he goes on to say, I appointed ministers of the water and soil and seed and war, and to the most loyal I gave these posts as reward. But ultimately, their power depended on me, for they were aphids and I was, and this is capital L Leviathan. And so
Dude,
I've seen people
that
asking if this was reference to the Leviathan on the Fundament, and I wanted to ask what you thought about that. Because it seems weird that the Leviathan, a creature of the sky,
okay,
would be
wait a
like,
second.
I'll help
So
you, but not you, I'm killing you.
pause. This whole thing that you just read, I glanced over it. I mean, I must have just read right over it and just thought, oh, well, this is just a dream.
Yeah.
No, man. So there's so much more to this dream. It's basically tying into what I just said before you started talking about this whole dream. Think
Okay.
about all of our enemy races being led down rivers into one singular pond,
Mm-hmm.
just like this dream he's having. Now, who is to say that this dream was his, like he owned it? This dream
Mm-hmm.
that he has could have been just very much a part of the darkness and their whole agenda. But if you
Okay.
think about it, if you think about the streams, and you think about how they're all converging into one big pond, and that whoever controls the pond ultimately controls the end game. All of us as guardians, fallen, cabal, Vex, we're all being led to the same origin point. Think about it that way.
So actually, I should just finish his dream before we
Yep.
continue to have this conversation. So he says, in time, I became the coordinator of all water and the dispensator of fertility. Then I became the coordinator of coordinators, and I gave up the control of thirst and life for control of those who had control. And all my craft became pure and abstract management of power. Then upon the horizon a wave, and the wave was God, and it approached me, saying, we are as one, you and I. We are the gathering of waters. Gather unto me as they have gathered unto you. We will be as one. The aphids screamed and begged me for salvation, but I was not of them. I was of the wave. And so clearly a message from Clarity Control, and written in allegorical large print. I am in the eyes of Clarity, the leader of humanity. This is why they contacted me. This is why they want me. And so he calls himself the Leviathan, who is granting life to the aphids by killing aphids who don't want to subscribe to his pond.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the God wave is coming, and he's like, yeah, you aphids are going to die because I am of the God wave, not of you. But then he really throws the wrench in it, in my opinion, where he says, this is a message from Clarity Control. Clarity Control is the God wave. I am the Leviathan. I am of the God wave. But we've been led to believe that the God wave was a product of the Traveler this entire time.
Yeah.
Like the fundament God wave.
Right.
So I just.
So that God wave, could that God wave have been created by the traveler, but because of his passing by, not necessarily a direct influence. Like if you put it in that term,
But
could it be that
in Clovis's dream, the God wave is
is of the
purposeful.
Leviathan? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Holy
it
Jesus! And then so if you think about the pond as just basically a microcosm of the fundament and how
exactly.
they had their and they had their battle. So our soul system could just be a macrocosm of the fun that this is funny because a fundament to the hive was just an immense area.
Hmm.
And so to put things that exist in the universe into such a small scale as like a pond, but then have to blow it back up to like our soul system and then shrink it back down to think of like ants and aphids. It's very parallel, but it just goes to show you that there's so many layers to all of this. So all of this that's happening, I mean, there's a reason why this is in there, right?
Yeah. So I want to ask you,
Mm-hmm.
with this dream in mind,
Yep.
Okay, I actually need to think about how I can
Yeah,
phrase
no,
it.
you're blowing my
Um,
mind because this whole pawn thing is really is kind of opening up something.
so let's believe the Book of Sorrows tale. I mean, that was written by Oryx. Horrible, reliable narrator right there. But so let's believe everything in it is absolutely true. The 53rd moon, the Traveler, was causing the syzygy, which would cause the
Uh-huh.
God Wave to destroy everything on the fundament.
Everything, yeah.
The Leviathan, who is of the sky, looked at the proto hive and said, the light is harsh, or the sky is harsh, and sometimes you just have to go with it.
Hmm.
Things like that, right? Does that make sense for the Traveler to do in any capacity? Does everything we've learned, even from the winnower side of events, everything the Traveler does seems to be like passive. It runs away, it just tries to uplift people, it doesn't ever try to purposefully hurt people. It might leave them behind, and that might end up hurting them, but it isn't the action of hurt,
Right. It's
which
the
the God
action.
Wave is.
Huh. Okay. So yeah, this is a little meta, but yeah. So maybe you're onto something. Maybe
Mm,
the traveler is grasping at the sentient life within the universe to say, hey, the only way to exist beyond now is to follow me. And in order for you to follow me, I've got to give you something that you have to chase after. So it's going to hurt. I'm
mm,
going to give you this gift, and then I'm going to proceed to take it away. And in order for you to get it back, you've got to follow me across the universe somehow. Or
mm,
you've got to have this thing inside you that makes you need whatever I've got some way, right?
mm,
It's almost, it's not trickery, but it's almost like the traveler is not really trying to manipulate you, but trying to say, if you want to keep going, I got to go. But if you want to keep going, maybe you should be right behind me, or do something that gets you to the next point with this gift or something. And then again, we're kind of prescribing that the traveler has all this, just conscious thought that he's
mm.
telling us these things. I mean, that's not happening, right? I mean,
Well,
to this day, we haven't heard the traveler speak, you know? So it's not
so
like,
so I think there actually is some trickery in this, but it's not coming from the Traveler. I think the darkness was coming, and the worms used the knowledge that the darkness was creating the God Wave to get the Proto Hive on their side to get them free of the fundament.
that makes sense
And
because there's an
so,
army.
yeah. And so, this dream that Clovis is having, I think the first half of it is a dream from the Traveler trying to get him to stop. And he was the Leviathan, and he was helping people, and he was doing good, and, things like that. But then, because he's Clovis, he can't do nothing but good. He can't help everyone. He has to help them in his way. So he
Yeah,
sends ant fighters, and it's like, because it's still him. He's the Leviathan. And
yeah,
then when the God Wave comes and it says, we are as one, you and I, we are the gathering of the waters. Clovis is compelled. It's like this is the darkness coming in, compelling Clovis away from the light.
yeah.
And he actually says, the aphids screamed and begged me for salvation, but
I
I was
know.
not of them. And it's like
Huh.
it feels like there's two conflicting sides in his dream, where half of it feels like it's of the light, because the darkness would never be like, I'm going to help you. That's not what it
Yeah, no.
does. But the Traveler isn't, I'm going to kill you. So it feels like there's both presences in his dream.
Yeah, so then that goes back to like how Clovis has done all of this work to expand humanity but at the end of everything that he does, it ends up being twisted and he becomes um, not a nice guy.
Mm,
So it's kind of like, yeah, I'm helping you. I'm helping you, aphids and ants. I'm helping you get to this point. But then when he gets to the point, it's kind of like
yeah.
he ends up making that choice
And
to
maybe
be a
that's
bad guy.
because of what you said before about the Precambrian explosion, when the Winnower, seeded the planet with darkness. Everything from planet Earth has darkness within them, and that was shown in the Beyond Light campaign, where we
Yeah,
didn't need the splinter to harness the darkness itself. We already had it. So
yeah.
maybe that's this
It
this
unlocked
part
that
here.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, where
yeah.
he has this dream where he's being shown the light by the traveler, where he needs to
Mhm.
help people build the pond and help the aphids, but there's still that piece of the darkness in him because he was born on Earth, where he's going to kill the aphids that don't want that instead of doing it the way the
Right,
traveler wanted.
right. So for you people out there listening right now, the Cambrian explosion was something that actually happened. They called to it in the lore a while back, and the Cambrian explosion was when basically life exploded on Earth, and the seas and the oceans were full. The fundament of Earth was full of life, almost seemingly out of nowhere. So you had all these little amoeba and you had all these little singular celled organisms floating around, and then all of a sudden, boom! There's this one event that
Mm-hmm.
caused life to explode all over, and then right after that, annihilation. And then it took a long time for the first life to really kind of crawl out of the ocean and
Mm-hmm.
start to become something else and evolve, and then here we are. But yeah,
Yeah, in the lore, it's from Shadowkeep in the book Unveiling. Uh, it's called the Cambrian explosion, and it's talking about like little blobs of ooze that lived peacefully on Earth. They only ate what they ate, and that was it until the Winnower came and basically compelled one ooze to eat another ooze and then gain everything that ooze has
uh-huh.
eaten. And so it ends saying it was the first defector, the first predator. It changed everything. Now the ooze balls needed sensors to watch for danger and brains to integrate those senses and generate plans for survival and swift neurons and muscles to enact that plan. This was the Cambrian explosion, the great birth of complex life on your world. I caused it. I, the defector, the destroyer, the one who takes. And so it, until then we were just like kind of mindless, just like
Yeah, coexistence.
yeah, coexistent nonsense.
Yeah,
No complexity whatsoever, because any form of complexity adds,
takes.
yeah,
Yeah,
adds that
yeah,
drive.
yeah. So in order to be a complex organism, you have to have defeated something before that in order to evolve to your higher state of being. And it's similar to what's going on right now in the universe, where our enemies and us as guardians, as we evolve, in order to evolve, we've got to destroy some pretty bad people, right? We got
Hmm.
it in our minds. I mean, we've killed gods.
They were bad gods, though.
Yeah,
They weren't the right ones.
we had to evolve.
Yeah,
Ooze balls.
yeah. We are no longer oozballs. Now we have ice powers.
We're using the stasis to. Yeah, that's crazy.
But to get back into his journal after his dream, he actually sends another message to Elsie, and it's basically just a cut and dry message. He's just saying like, I'm not going to condescend, blah blah blah. I need to know how your disease is working. Transmat system is unfortunately not an adequate imager, and so he actually mentions perhaps Willa will one day learn how to engrammatize and duplicate the human form. And so this is what I was talking about
Yeah,
before, where Clovis Bray is believed to be the figurehead of the Clovis Bray factory company, whatever it would be called. And so you have Anna, who built Rasputin and told Rasputin to guard over the Ishtar Collective. And when Clovis came to raid the Ishtar Collective, fought Clovis. And you have Willa, who made engrams. And it seems almost like Willa's not involved whatsoever. They're not talking. She's doing her own thing. And if they were talking, he would probably be pushing her more to engrammatize and duplicate the human form, because that's exactly what he wants. He wants to live forever, and if he could turn himself into an engram and then duplicate himself in a better form, then that's living forever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Elsie, who seemingly did nothing until it came to the Exos. And then at the end of that, I guess Anna came back on board for Exos as well, from what we know about her.
Yeah.
It just seems like Clovis Bray might be the name of the company, but all the Brays are just working on their own projects, and Clovis Bray doesn't have control over what they do or control over what they've made.
Yeah. I guess some things probably some things may have just been capitalistic adventures or ventures, in to keep sustaining progression on his end. He has his agenda, he has his motives, but in order to help make that happen, you've got to have money. or you got to have some sort of glimmer. You got to have some sort of thing that people will. You got to have it. You got to have the tools at your disposal. You can't get those tools without money or glimmer or labor.
Do you think they had glimmer in the Golden Age? They had to have, right?
Know.
Was that like the currency though?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was.
Glimmer feels
whenever
like a
you hear
currency.
about. I know, but whenever you hear about, like, how long have we known about? How long have we? I don't even know where to look to see if glimmer, how far glimmer goes back. Like, did warlords use glimmer? They did, right?
I have no idea. Maybe.
But were they using it before the collapse? This is crazy. It's
and
glimmer.
Like, glimmer is like a material that can become whatever you want it to become, right? Like, that's the weirdest thing for currency. It's like a
wait. So, isn't there somewhere in the lore that talks about how glimmer happened? Like, it was. I can't remember. It was stored. It was kind of like a byproduct of trying to make engrams or something.
I think that sounds familiar.
Totally wrong.
Where engrams are the fourth state of matter: solid, liquid, gas, engram.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so glimmer,
which is not. It's not a far concept. From sci-fi, because things in sci-fi are thought to exist on another plane as long as you can access that plane through some sort of mathematical equation. So, like, for instance, if you had the mathematical equation to store infinite knowledge, you could figure it out just by figuring out the problem to that mathematics. So, like, for some sci-fi circles, they talk about an engram, but it's not called an engram. It's like storing information about matter so that it can be it's almost like having a zip drive, right? Or having a zip file, which is a much more complicated script, but it can hold so much more information. And then you just have to unzip it. So an engram is like a much higher state of mathematics and code, and you can just unzip it later and get whatever was originally in there out.
And so here's actually what I was trying to say though. In the original Destiny 1 Grimoire Ghost Fragment card, whatever the hell these used to be called, it says, with the right inputs and an energy source, glimmer can be transmuted into nearly anything. Isn't that crazy though? Like, so you're telling me that I can just take a pile of glimmer and it's like computer, TV, what do I need? Like a blender, you know, whatever I
Yeah,
need it to be, a pile of glimmer becomes it. That's like the craziest, like, sci-fi explanation of money ever, where it's like you take money and you exchange it for objects because money has value, but
right.
glimmer is actually the object if you want it to be.
So nuts.
And I think this is kind of what you were saying. Between its inflow and outflow lies the pool of liquidity. Glimmer used as trade currency. Master Rahul in the tower, for example, sells recovered matter engrams in exchange for glimmer, since he knows he can use glimmer to acquire new engrams and keep them flowing to guardians. That's
Yeah.
and isn't that just
It's like
silly though? Like, how does anyone?
so it's like Grimoire is our regular code, and then the engram is the zip version
Yeah.
of the glimmer. But both can be whatever you want as long as you write it the right way, right?
Okay, so unfortunately, this gear requires resources to manufacture. Guardians must bring enough glimmer and other staples like spin metal and relic iron to keep the engine of the city's economy turning. So
Yeah,
it's not just glimmer. You need glimmer and you need your plastics and you need your metals.
yeah.
But it's like, how does, I don't know. It's like, how smart is it? Like, what does it actually become?
I guess it becomes anything, but you got to have the right elements to do. So remember when what's his name?
Freaking
The new
Bitcoin.
monarchy guy made all his money in
Hideo.
pastilles. Yeah. Well, he still needs glimmer. And then you think about like who are the other people that are trading in glimmer now? No one really. Is there glimmer exchange still
Yeah.
at the spider? There is, right?
Yeah, every bounty.
Yeah. So you're getting
All
glimmer,
And that's
and then
another weird thing because it's like the fuck's you're making me pay to do my job. Spider, at
thanks,
least I
dude.
kind of guess, where he's like, I have this high value target who can give you something, but I'm gonna need something in return for giving you the
Right,
information of its whereabouts. But even that isn't even glimmer. That's ghost shell pieces.
right. Yeah, that's a lot of ghost shells too. By
Yeah,
the way, that's a whole nother thing because there's only so many ghosts.
yeah. That is a finite source. There are no new ghosts being created.
Yeah. So where are these? Are these just shells or are they actual
I mean, a
ghosts?
lot of dead guardians got a lot of dead shells, right?
Yeah, I guess. Remember when the ghosts used to just kind of float freely in and out of the first tower,
I do remember that.
and
The
then
first
like the
tower, the
speaker?
original, the original tower had a lot of like little things like that. Like they had the PA system, they had the
Yeah, that's good.
ghosts, and in the dawning, the sweeper bot would be making snow angels. Like, why is that not here? We have snow
Yeah,
on the game, but come
they got
on.
rid of the floating balls this last dawning.
No, they
We don't
didn't.
have the ball. Yeah, we don't have the balls that we can go
The
take
purple
and let
ball. I
go.
saw it the other day.
No, no, not the purple ball. The little glowing golden
Oh
ball.
yeah, I remember those. Probably because
Yeah.
every year people are like, "This is something." Figure it out. Maybe if we take one to every corner of the tower and let them go at the
Oh
same
goodness.
time.
Wouldn't that be funny if there really was and we just all missed it?
You know, I just never understood what it was the entire time.
Yeah. Well, they got rid of that, so maybe there's something to that.
And maybe they were like, "It's too late. You don't get the cool thing.
Yeah.
We gave you
So we're
years
all
to
trading.
figure it out."
So we're all trading in Glimmer and we're making engrams, but in order to understand how to make engrams, you had to be of a higher knowledge, which was the cryptarchs. And then as you kind of learn yourself as a field scout and become a guardian and you're like leveling up, you can kind of decode some of the engrams in the field yourself because you've acquired this knowledge, I guess, somehow.
I mean, I think that's at least partially just a game enjoyment.
Mechanic. Yeah.
It's like the Cryptarch's still in decrypting it. It's just,
I
you
haven't gone
know,
to
no one wants to go to the Cryptarch anymore.
yeah.
The only reason you go there is for prime engrams, not even exotics anymore. It used to be greens and blues you could decrypt yourself, and it
Yeah.
was like legendaries and exotics you had to bring in. But that's lame. I don't want to do that.
Now you can just pick up bounties from your app on your phone.
Only if you're in orbit or logged off, which is
Oh
just like
yeah, what's up with that?
we'll get there eventually where they let us just pick up bounties. Like
It's
instead
just
of going to the tower, we'll just have a bounty tab and it's like
yeah,
bounties.
yeah. So, well, okay. So in Halo Reach, when they had bounties and weekly thingies on the
Mm-hmm.
side, you didn't go pick them up from anywhere. They were just there. So if you happened to do it while you're playing, or you could try to attain it, it was just already there, and it would
Mm-hmm.
reset every week. I wish that was. I know that we need to go to the tower and show our presence to other people around and kind of be, population in the game. But I wish I could just log in and start playing instead of have to go spend 20 minutes at the tower and then fly over to some other dude and talk to this dude and
Mm.
pick up a bounty here and there. And oh crap, I forgot to pick up that bounty when we did the nightfall, so I didn't get that reward.
God, I
It's
used to
just a
hate that.
mess. And now we have
Uh,
so many materials.
we're gonna lose a lot more next season when they
Oh,
become absolutely trash. So everyone listening, if you have any relic iron, no, not relic iron, seraphite or phase glass needles, alkane dust,
yeah. Alkane was on Titan.
and mercury. What was mercury? Simulation cores?
Yep.
Any of those, spend them at Spider as much as you can.
Because they're just going away.
Yeah, just like, get into that farm of glimmer to legendary shards to enhancement cores, and then glimmer legendary shards enhancement cores, glimmer legendary shards enhancement cores, whatever it is you have to do to just spend them, just to get rid of them. Because if you're like me and you have like thousands of them, they're just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah. I can't wait until we get Spirit Bloom again.
Spirit bloom, that was on Venus.
uh-huh.
Yeah. Well,
Whatever.
we are kind of at our time. I don't even know what our time is anymore. If we're an hour or a little past an
I think we
hour.
still got about 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's usually what we do. We do like a hour 40, hour 15.
Yeah.
The next entry is a big one though, and I feel like we should get through entry 7, and then we
Okay.
can cut it there. Because then the next one, I'm really excited to talk about, but I think it would be more exciting if I can. I think I can make it happen for on screen fun
Okay.
things
Okay.
next week, but
Cool.
I can't make it
So we'll
happen
save
today.
that one.
Yeah, so we'll save that one. So we'll get through entry 7. Entry 7 is the one that I tweeted in the teaser. The whole point of it, Clovis passes through the big gate at the what is it, Glassway? I completely forgot what it was freaking called.
Yeah, it's a glassway.
Yeah, the Glassway strike. Oh, actually, you know what? That's interesting. Um, is it in this? Yes. Okay, it is in this. So it's interesting. We'll get to it as we go through this entry. The Big Vex Gate and the Glassway Strike, which the gate opens up and there's like the pool of radiolarian fluid and it hurts you to go in it. And he goes through it with a bunch of people, including Elizabeth, and immediately a curtain of blue violet fire filled an entire half of the sky, pebbled with granules seething with promontories and flares. They stood beneath a blue hypergiant, titan of suns, looming over all, and it should have killed all the human-bodied companions instantly. With peak radiance in the far ultraviolet, it could cook flesh. But the probes said it was impossibly safe for life. And so this is our first encounter with one of the coolest locations that I was really hoping we were going to see. I understand why we didn't see it. Europe is huge. Europe is awesome. Um, but This is the Forge star. That what they were looking at is the Forge star, Volantis. I know it's here somewhere. Yeah, there it is. 2082 Volantis.
Yeah.
And they're kind of amazed at it because, like I just said, it should be killing them, but it's not killing them. And it's like, how is that even possible? You know, they're on this planet, looking at a sun that should be so powerful, so hot, so bright that it kills them, that it burns their skin off. And he has geologists who are identifying the rock on the planet, and they're saying it's almost 13 billion years old. And I don't know how a geologist can just look at a rock and do that, but that's impressive. Maybe they taste it. They're like,
Carbon dating is just in his taste buds.
yeah. It seemed pretty fast, right? Like pretty instant. Wouldn't that take some time at least?
I guess. I don't know. Maybe their instruments and tools are like super hyper advanced.
This rock is almost 13 billion years old, the geologist whispered. It formed with the very first generation of planets, less than 1 billion years after the universe were born. We are standing on a dissected piece of one of the first worlds. Like, how do you understand that? How,
I know, right?
Who are you to have the balls to say this statement? Like, And so Clovis also has an astronomer who says that's not possible. That's a type O hypergiant there, which of course anyone can tell just by looking at it. They're lucky to live up to 2 million years, and metallicity, whatever the hell that word is, 15 sigma above average. That is not an old star. And so that's where we're kind of getting into it. You know, they're trying to figuring it out. And that's why it's called the Forge Star, because whoever the inhabitants of this planet were, they had refueled the star. They were stoking it. Enormous portals dumped steams of hydrogen into the giant, replenishing its mass and fusion power. At this obscene size and brightness, the star should have gone supernova in less than 2 million years. It would take a single photon to crawl from the core to the surface. Which
it's
I guess
crazy.
That would be the bad thing. That would be the thing that makes it go supernova.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But life can exist in it. So it kind of helps. It kind of helps explain why the Vex radiolarian fluid is able to live in such a volatile environment, because that environment is protecting that very much protecting that life form.
And so that's actually to continue a little bit further, and then we'll go back to the star. It seemed our gate had delivered us onto one of these satellites. We ventured out of the ruins onto an island of living glass, broken by fissures of deep green light and reservoirs of white fluid. So, vault of glass, does that make you think, or living glass, does that make you think vault of glass?
Absolutely.
Because it makes me think, like, wasn't Atheon, like, very glassy? Like, he wasn't metals. He was, like, see-through and shiny and stuff. Like,
well, his whole entire vault was just glass. I mean, it's just.
And there was the green lights there. It just seems like, it almost seems like he came from the Forge Star planet, like, to us. Like, he was, like, stepping right out to it, right? Like, just, that's his whole theme. And maybe that's even where we went. Maybe we were actually transported in the excursion into the Vault of Glass, and we were just beneath the surface of the Forge Star planet. The planet needs a name. Does the planet have a name? Unless Volantis is the name.
Oh, Volantis.
Is that a name? I'm going to check that really quick. But what is interesting, no, it's not a thing.
No.
What is interesting, though, is that he's talking about these reservoirs of white fluid, and then when we go into the Glassway Strike, this living glass island, reservoirs of fluid, the portal opens, and basically the fluid's just pouring out, right? Like that's just like a really interesting attention to detail. I like.
Huh. Okay, so the Forge Star, is where it's forging new life,
and that's the star itself. But I guess 2082 Volantis should be the planet.
Maybe. and then so that's just glass.
Well, that part of it, because it sounds like it was like in shattered pieces.
Yeah. Oh man, it's
Yeah,
almost like a
so
satellite of the star, but it's totally glass.
yeah, so the Vex live on a shattered planet, and the Hive came from a gas giant planet, which
Huh.
to them felt like a planet of layered seas.
Yeah,
Destiny has a really interesting way of handling its planets.
yeah. Well, if you think about like Jupiter and its gaseous nature,
Hmm.
it's layers
Yeah,
of
no, exactly.
gas. Yeah.
It's something
So
that
that's
like you learn in school. It's a gas giant. You're like, okay, so it's just like a big thing of gas. There's nothing really
uh
to it. But having it illustrated as like it's got layers of oceans because that's how it would feel to be on that planet. It's
yeah,
like that is insane to think about.
yeah. Like we're on Europa, but we're on the outer layer, and beneath all of that massive crust is just an ocean
Mm.
underneath,
Hmm.
and it's just like a slushy ocean underneath, and then further down, if you could get to it, there's there's more layer, but like on Titan, it was also the same idea
Hmm.
of just layers, so there's this ocean of methane, but on Titan, there are
It had
rock
that.
formations
Yeah.
from the debris that settles from the atmosphere and creates almost like a crust
Hmm.
there too. So you could, it's funny we didn't see any of that on Titan, but Traveler, but there are places you could land,
Yeah, I mean
like it
they had to build
theoretically.
their rigs into something. They can't just be on nothing, right? They have to have some
Yeah,
sort of structure.
yeah. And that's the other thing, like the atmospheres are completely different. So like like Io, I mean, to go there and to even have anything, but if the reason why Io looks the way it looks is because that was the last place the Traveler was trying to terraform it before everything
Hmm.
fell apart. And so like you see those huge conical shells and the nautilus formations, those fossilized looking things, is
Hmm.
maybe had something to do with how the Traveler terraforms, is by using certain whatever at his disposal.
Years ago, some of the planet designers, they were like doing a tour of it or something like that, and they were answering questions, and they said that the bones and shells were put there on purpose. It wasn't like just this will look neat. It was like they had an idea behind why they would be there, and it never really got explored. And I'm kind of upset about that. Not
Yeah,
that it
that's really
can't
cool
ever get
though.
explored. It can one day. It just was not.
It's almost like a hyper speed um evolution.
Mm.
I don't know. My mind goes everywhere on that one.
Like maybe the planet needed some form of primitive life to be terraformed and then evolved from there. So like you said, like a hyperspeed evolution, like it existed and then it died and it fossilized, and that is the process of terraforming from the traveler.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it takes life to create the vegetation and stuff around
Yeah,
you. I mean, that doesn't just happen.
yeah.
It takes eons of evolution for that to happen. But the Traveler has some sort of ability where he can just do it, really quick.
Hmm.
I mean, Venus, has tons of vegetation on it and life. Mars did at one time, sorta.
Yeah, no, that's something that's always just been weird. Where it's like, yeah, Mars was not what Mars and Mercury. It's like, yeah, these were like beautiful planets and not just dusty spaces. It's like, really? Are you sure?
Yeah. Huh.
But
I always thought it interesting that Venus and Mars were always trapped within this like binary nature with each other as far as
mm,
like existence goes within our solar system. So like
hmm.
the Vex would go from one point to the other, but it was oftentimes you were either on Venus or you were on Mars or but you were on both, but
Hmm.
not really, or you were just in the garden.
Yeah, and then in the Vault of Glass, it was like, are you going to Venus or are you going to Mars? And it's like, you're not going to
Yeah,
Mars. You're going to the past of Venus or the future of Venus,
Right,
and it's like
right.
Venus was
And
dusty at
and
some point. Like what?
and so here's the cool thing about it is oftentimes in astronomy, scientists will describe the planet of Venus as Earth in the future if we let it, if it became a greenhouse, environment, and then Mars was Earth, but in the past, like if it lost its atmosphere. So what would happen to Earth if it lost its atmosphere? It would look like Mars. What would happen to Earth if it gained a ridiculous amount of, horrible greenhouse
Too
gases?
much
It would look like
atmosphere.
Venus. Yeah. So it's just funny that
That's
for all those
crazy.
years, yeah, for all those years, if you thought about Earth, why does it look the way it is? Well, if it didn't have the moon to help churn up its atmosphere and keep it going, then it might end up like Venus or it might end up like Mars.
Can you imagine if that's like real life? If that's what happened, like people were on Venus and people were on Mars and they just fucked it up in different ways
Yeah.
and they had to go to Earth.
That's hilarious. And like the only way they get to go to Earth is just throw their DNA out into orbit.
Yeah, just kind of hope.
And then it happened somehow. Dinosaurs first happened, but then eventually we got here. Some sort of sentient life would emerge. That's
Yeah.
called panspermia, by the way.
I don't. Okay. But so continuing into this entry, they're very intrigued by this whole thing. He actually mentions above us looms structures linked by bolts of lightning, reminiscent of the Citadel ruins on Venus. And so I thought this was interesting that the Vex have this thing about replicating architecture on different places, and it seems to serve a purpose. Maybe it's like, this is the machine, this machine does this. If you want this machine to work on another planet, you got to rebuild the machine, and it's got the same architecture. It's got the same doorways and the same portal locations and stuff like that. So for Volantis, we're going to call it that for ease. If Volantis has a structure like the Citadel ruins on Venus, that means they have that tower that Skolas went to go back in time to pull the wolves into the future to build up his house larger.
Right.
And that was called the Terminus.
Yep.
And so it's like the Terminus, a terminal, and it had all these Vex portals, like so many, more than you've ever seen in like such a small confined space. And it's kind of going back to the beginning of his creation of the gate. He where does he mention it? I just want to find it really fast. I can't even find it. The beginning of the gate, he makes it sound like it's what's that show? Stargate, where they have the symbols on the gate and the symbols line up in it. And it's like these symbols bring you to this place. That's kind of how he described the gate working in this. And so it's almost like, is that what the Terminus was? It was like the ease of access to have all these gates going to different places. So you can come through one, go through the other, but then come back through and go through number 3, and then come back through and then go through number 5, and then come back through, and your final end goal is gate number 4, or whatever the case may be. And it's like you don't have to reconfigure any of the gates. They all do their own thing. And that's why it would be the Terminus, the terminal of all these Vex gates. And they have a similar structure on their original planet.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And
that's hyper complex to think of too.
Yeah.
Like any portal could take you to one place, but they're all interconnected in one way or another because they have a design purpose.
Yeah. Where it's like you might have to get a couple layovers, but you can get anywhere by going through any portal.
Yeah. I know you want to get to New York, but you got to stop in Austin and then like Florida.
Yeah. Except it's instant, so it's not that bad. I hope I can stop by at Bojangles though. We don't have Bojangles up here. That's my favorite thing about layovers. It's like, you got a Bojangles in this airport? Because I'm gonna be happy about it.
That's funny, dude.
But then there is the big reveal, and so Clovis writes, I called over one of my scientists, and M. Sundaresh, and he says, I want to bring back samples. I told her there will be some risk. The Vex are not always docile. M. Sundaresh, Maya Sundaresh, part of the Ishtar Collective that he just had a raid on. It's not working with him.
Yeah. There you go.
Kind of like a big red flag, isn't it?
Yep.
I remember I read that.
Absolutely.
And it was so jarring to read that Maya was working with him. I was like, what the hell? What did I miss that let her come work with Clovis? Like, that's not who she is. And I was like, she has to be like infiltrating. She's like espionaging, stuff like that. Like, something is up with her.
Yeah. Or she's not who she is.
Well, so we do learn what was up with her. And especially like later on when you start seeing more of her, you're like, that's not who Maya Sundaresh is. That's like a different person. But so the Vex samples that Clovis wants is of the Vex milk, the radiolarian fluid. And when they do that, when they begin to harvest the fluid from the nearby reservoir, a group of lightly armed Vex platforms attacked them with inaccurate weapons fire. Elizabeth replied with a matter laser, a grotesquely disproportionate weapon. A coherent matter pulse bears the same relation to an ordinary bullet that a gamma laser does to a flashlight. I don't know what that means.
He's just saying she used a really big gun that was wildly unnecessary.
Oh, okay.
It's like using a laser versus a flashlight.
Oh, okay. Like to light a room. It's like, yeah, this laser's gonna like shoot a hole through your wall, but it'll light up the room really nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Clovis has to use obnoxious terminology.
I know.
And I explained to her that we must proceed as investigators, not conquerors. If we simply scavenge and abduct out of curiosity, the Vex will reply in kind, and that is a risk we can manage. We must not provoke them to war. Which is the most un-Clovis thing I've ever heard him say. He's being non-confrontational. He's like, no, we'll work with them. Like, what?
That's a little shady.
Yeah, who are you, Clovis?
He's just, I mean, he could just be driven by that madness, to get to the point that he needs to get to.
Yeah.
And so he's just like, it's not important. Let's just keep going.
He's so close to Exos that he's willing to compromise. Can you believe it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Toland, I guess. Same thing.
Yeah. Same thing.
Oh well.
Okay. Well, then, so I feel like next week we will be finishing off the Collector's Edition journal, and we'll be getting into, maybe the week after, the ARG, which is the continuation of the journal.
Yeah, that'll be a great next episode.
Yeah. Even if we don't get to the continuation, because this is huge. This whole journal is probably one of the biggest ones we've ever gotten. Because like the first one we got was Cade's journal, and that was all scribbles in the margin, and that was in Taken King, and we didn't get one for Rise of Iron, and then we got Destiny 2, and it came with Callus's hit list, which wasn't really a story. It was just like, this is this guy, this is this guy, and this is this guy, and that was it. Yeah. It was great. I loved it. Don't get me wrong. Then in Shadowkeep, because we didn't get one for Forsaken, and then in Shadowkeep we got this one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That was a good one. The K1, and the K1 is a prequel to this one. So this is just like one huge story that we're finally seeing the conclusion to.
Yeah. What's funny is all of this, like, right, since K1 has been kind of expanding on the Grimoire that was first originally written. So this is great.
Yeah. That's true. This is all like vanilla Destiny 1 stuff finally being like in insane detail explored. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait.
But that is going to be us for this week. If you want to find more of us, we are on Twitter We only tweet about the show. So you follow us on Twitter and you hit that notification bell thing, and hit the little bell thing next to following, and it'll send you a push notification on any details about the show. We do a show every other week, so our next episode will be on January 10th. Is that any issues with that? Just
Nope.
no,
Perfect.
nothing that you think of. Okay, January 10th, and we will be continuing and ending this collector's edition lore, and maybe even getting into the next continuation of it, which was the ARG lore.
Yeah.
Which is some interesting stuff in there. That's where it like really just like kind of starts to spiral. And I think after that, once we get through that, I think our next one should be Legacy Lament.
Yeah, that'd be a good one too.
Kind of continues from there as well a little bit. And then when we actually start getting into the lore books of the year, it's like more scattered. It's like this one's taking place during here, and this one's taking place during the latter half, and it goes further, and this one's it's all overlapping. But so at Loose Canon Show on Twitter, if you want to follow us, that'd be awesome. And if you came in late, we also are on anywhere that podcasts can be listened to.
The podcast. Yeah.
So just like search Loose Canon Show. We post on Anchor, and that gets posted on Spotify, on Stitcher, on Apple, on Android podcasts, Google Play, I think it's called. I don't even know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so yeah, thanks for watching.
Bye,
everybody. Yeah, or YouTube. Sorry, I'm just reading chat. Thanks. Bye.